As many of you all know, I played 3 years of high school basketball for the Winfield Generals. Pretty much, and basketball has just been a staple in my life. I mean, I grew up playing it and everything else. But when I look back on my career, I always think about who were some of the best individual players, one, but two, individual scores. Now, if you want to hear my full list, I would more than happy give it to you. But today is not that episode. Sorry, you lucked out. But I will tell you this: among those best shooters and players, my guest is probably a top three candidate, maybe. And I'm not sugarcoating that as well. For people that don't know about my guest, I'm very sorry. Well, no, actually, you're very lucky because if you knew who he was and you played against him, he probably hung 30 on you. I'm just saying. That's how good of a shooter he was and a player he was as well. So again, you watch his film. Oh, I mean, even just watching from the bench sometimes, whenever I'm getting a breather or even trying to guard him, because I had to guard him probably a handful of times, and every time I put my hand up, and I was literally the tallest guy, and he's right there, and he just rises up above me. I'm just like, oh, that's going in. Just turn around and walk away. Just go back on defense. It's going in, and I was right. I'm not kidding. I was right. But anyway, let's dive into this again. As any episode, I'm always excited, but again, since this guy's one of my favorite people to watch basketball wise, this just makes it even more special. So let's get right into it. My guest for however you may be listening to this episode, you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. Go give us a rating, you give us a shout out, whatever you feel comfortable doing. And also you can follow me on Twitter at Taylor_Kennedy7 and just keep up with everything going on within this podcast. Well, again, let's dive right into this biography and sort of just this background as well, because again, it's very interesting. I love this background. So my guest was a 2017-18 first team class single A all-state captain and Little Kanawha Conference player of the year. And here's another stat I find very intriguing as well. After his career at Ravenswood, because he was a 4-year player at Ravenswood, after he left, he holds the West Virginia career percentage record at the free throw line of 92.1%. Talk about a kid that's lived at the free throw line pretty much his whole prep career. Just saying, he's done that. But as we continue, again, he played at Ravenswood High School. He graduated in 2018, and he was named a All WVU in the USA Today, and he was named to the state tournament all tournament team in class single A, and helped lead his team to a Little Kanawha Conference championship 2 times, regional championship 2 times, and sectional championship 4 times. So a tremendous leader on and off the court as well. He eventually went on to go play a year at West Virginia Tech under Bob Williams. So we'll talk about that as well. But without further ado, let's dive right into this and let's welcome in our guest for this episode of Hoops Across the Mountain State, Mr. Isaiah Morgan. Isaiah, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me today.
How's everything been for you?
Everything's been going very, very well.
So what are you getting? What are you doing nowadays? I know with COVID it may be a little bit different, but what's Isaiah been up to?
So I actually I'm a student at W.Va. This is my 3rd year at W.Va. I'll be graduating this semester, and actually a few weeks ago I just got accepted into W.Va medical school. So I'll be staying at W.Va for 4 more years and further my career in medicine.
Wow, cool! Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So what all do you want to do in the medicine field?
So right now I'm thinking about going into anesthesiology specifically, but same token, as I said, like any pre-med or medical student, it's going to keep your options open. But right now I think anesthesia is probably my number one path.
So let's talk about this before we talk about your basketball career. So with COVID being around and being around for the last 2 years going on now, has it been difficult trying to decide whether or not you wanted to continue your passion in the medicine field?
No, I think if anything, it's only furthered that because you see the amount of people that are affected by this pandemic, and my main goal for wanting to go into medicine is to help people. And I think the past 2 years, there's been more people that have needed help than in a long, long time. So I really think that this pandemic has just furthered my desire to pursue a career in medicine.
Who were some people that helped you just sort of nudge you in the path towards medicine? Because obviously, I mean, I've looked at I saw an article that had your ACT score on it, and you had scored a 31 your first try. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I would feel embarrassed if I even said my ACT score. So, you scored a 31 on your ACT, and then obviously you're now in medical school. You got accepted for 4 more years at WVU. Just who were some people that nudged you in that direction?
So, I know a lot of kids that go to medical school. Maybe like they had like a parent or a close family member who is a physician, and it wasn't really that for me. But I've just always had an interest in medicine, and I've also had a really, really terrific network of people, both family and friends, and just a number of people in my community, teachers, professors, and everything that have kind of just helped me along the way and supported my dream. So there's not really maybe one person who caused me to want to go into medicine, but I couldn't even name you the entire list of people that have helped me along my journey getting to where I'm at.
Again, this is so interesting just because, you were a tremendous basketball player. Now you're going into medical school. Again, congratulations on that. But, again, with COVID still being around, it just still, I'm impressed, I should say. I'm impressed at the fact that you're still keeping with it. So that's kudos to you, because obviously, as people know nowadays, if something gets rough or something like COVID affects what they want to do, then they sort of, run away and stuff like that. So I give you props for that. But enough talk with medicine. Let's talk hoops. The whole point of this podcast is hoops.
Yep.
We're hoops guys. And again, and I'm not sugarcoating this as well, Isaiah. Before we got on the air, I told you that we had played against each other whenever I played at Winfield and you played at Ravenswood. We sort of crossed paths at Nays, which, if you guys don't know about Nays, it's like a tournament league, I guess you could say, that's all across the state of West Virginia and other states as well. But, Isaiah and I used to cross paths, let's just say it like that, because that's how it was. Because his team would usually win probably 95% of the time. Just a ballpark number. But, Isaiah, let's start here. I have mentioned how you were a terrific shooter, and your stats don't lie. Don't try and curveball it now. Your stats are out there. But what sort of led you to this more of a shooting role, just a very consistent shooting role?
Okay, so this is actually a crazy story. When I was really young, I think like 4th grade, I was playing like in a youth league, and my dad was our team coach. And I was a decent player back then, just because I was a little bit taller than most kids and a little bit quicker or whatever. But I was not very skilled at all, because a lot of kids have been playing in like the really low level, like 2nd or 3rd, sometimes even like first grade and like the 8-foot hoop leagues. And I remember it came down to a play at the end of the game. I'm driving in, I get fouled. As time expires, I get 2 free throws. We're down 1, and I miss them both. After the game, I'm super, super torn up about it. And my dad, when we get home, and he's like, well, if you miss a couple, let's shoot a couple in the driveway. Let's practice a little bit. So maybe next time we get in that situation, we won't miss them. And I remember I was so upset. I told him, you know what, it's actually not that big of a deal. Keep in mind, at this point in time, this is like probably 2009 maybe. So my favorite player was LeBron, and he's like winning MVPs. He's trying to lead the Cavs to another Eastern Conference final. And I go, the best player in the world is LeBron. LeBron can't really shoot free throws, so it's not that big of a deal. And obviously, yeah, I mean, the response, my dad goes, well, that's cool and all. If you get the 6'8" and become like, probably the best athlete in the sport of basketball, then he said, you're right. You probably won't have to shoot free throws, but chances are you're not going to do either of those things. So I'd say, you should probably work on it. And it really just became kind of like a thing from there. I remember, just talking to him and talking to some other people um, like Coach Price and some of our other coaching staff in the community. I mean, like a really young age, like fourth, fifth grade. I remember, I've always been like a student of the game. I've always really been in like the statistics of things, and just back then being like, okay, like who's some of the best free throw shooters we ever had? Because if this is what if this is going to be my role, if I'm going to have to be a guy that can shoot the basketball, I want to have a goal to beat. And some of the best shooters from Jackson County at that time, statistically, was like Chase Fisher, and Brett Rector was the guy who was holding the free throw record at Ravenswood. And Brett's record was like about 90%, which that's obviously crazy. I mean, even shooting mid 80s in high school is unreal. But I mean, from about 10, 11, 12, that was the goal, was like, I'm going to be over a 90% free throw shooter. And yeah, I mean, it was just an everyday thing. It was a grind. It was something I loved, but it was seriously from a very young age. I mean, that was what I was motivated to do, is be a very good shooter.
That has to be the most interesting story of all. It's a top one. I will say that it is one of the few stories that you rarely hear, because sometimes you just hear people say, "I just went out and shoot. I just went out and shoot, got better at my game." That's that. But you took it from a different standpoint. You took it from a Michael Jordan from The Last Dance, when he said, "I took it personally." Then you said, "Okay, LeBron James, the best player in the world, and he can't shoot free throws. So I'm going to do something better. I'm going to make my free throws." So like that's so fascinating. I mean, like, wow, like you realize that on your own. I mean, you obviously, you had your dad helping you, but you realize that on your own. Wow, that's something.
And something else that's like absolutely insane. And anyone who's been around Ravenswood basketball, anyone who knows Coach Canterbury, this probably won't surprise them. But for anyone who's like not around the program or does not know him well, he is the number one guy for stats for Ravenswood basketball. I'd say he knows Ravenswood basketball statistics better than any other person knows a single school statistics in the state. I would reason to say like that's a pretty good guess. And he walks in before my first high school basketball game and shows me Brett's career free throw shooting thing, and he's like, "This is the goal." I mean, we've talked about this before, but he goes, "You got to start off strong. You can't be choking tonight. We can't be missing free throws because we're nervous. This is game one." I was 14 starting my first high school basketball game, and I mean, we just kind of set the goal there and just went on from that. But he called it in the locker room before I even started playing. He goes, "Okay." He goes, if we're going to actually do this, we got to start tonight.
Another great story. You're 2 for 2 with stories, so keep the stories coming. This whole podcast revolves around tremendous stories. So if you have one, please share.
Absolutely, yeah.
So before we talk about some different games and some different moments within your career and some guys as well, let's not discredit them. But I would be guilty if I didn't start here. So let's talk about the community of Ravenswood. How important is basketball to that community?
It's everything. I mean, in Ravenswood, I mean, it is a sports community. It's obviously a very, very small community, but sports is everything in Ravenswood. And fortunately, our basketball program over the years has been extremely successful for a long period of time. So basketball is as big of a part of the community as anything is. I mean, fortunately, I think through Coach Price and Coach Canterbury and the rest of the great staff he's had over the years, I mean, they have built that, just ingrained that into our community. And really, even on down years, though, I mean, it is just unreal the support that that community gives to the basketball team. Really, I would say that at this point in Ravenswood, I mean, basketball is just kind of synonymous with the culture of the town itself, really.
How did at an early age, how did you sort of just feel the love with this Ravenswood community? Because I've obviously what you just said, and I agree with you because I've talked to Mick Price before, and I can sort of get the feeling that it's a sports heavy town. At what age or at what moment did you know that, hey, I love playing in front of this community and I look forward to playing in front of this community when that time comes?
It was right away. I mean, so where I actually went to elementary school, I could have gone to the Ravenswood or Ripley, and it was really like within my first interaction with what would be like my future teammates, and with Coach Price at the High River basketball camp. I just fell in love with it then. I mean, it's a youth camp, obviously. For back then, it was just kids going into third through eighth. They've kind of extended it down to letting some younger kids into it now, just because, again, the camp is so well run that there's parents wanting their kids, going into kindergarten, first, second grade to go to that, just because they, at this point, they were, campers at a lot of times, because camp's been going, for 30 some years now. But just those first interactions, and just seeing like the quality of people that I could be around, it just sold me right away.
So, okay, so you've mentioned him a few times. So let's talk about him. Your coach, Mick Price, legendary head basketball coach.
Mhm.
People all across the state of West Virginia know about him. Some people have actually called him the godfather of basketball. Walk me through Mick Price. What's that relationship like between the two of you, and just how big of a role has he played in your basketball career?
Well, first thing I'll say is I definitely agree with that statement, the godfather of basketball, West Virginia basketball. But I'll say, I want to, before I dive more into that as a coach, I do want to say I think he's an even better person. So, and again, that kind of like feeds into what enables him to be the type of coach he is, because obviously he's very fiery, he's very passionate, but I think he builds such strong relationships with literally every single person he's around in the entire Ravenswood basketball community, that it enables him to do whatever he needs as a coach. So I actually probably have another really good story. So I was saying, when I first met Coach Price, my first year at the basketball camp, I was a place winner for some type of competition we had. There's always like a bunch of different competitions they have throughout the week. On the final day, he has like this little award ceremony for all the kids. It's really cool. And I was like third place for whatever competition. And one of the counselors didn't give me this little towel that I was supposed to get. And after the camp was over and people were starting to leave, my mom takes me and we go up to Coach Price, and she's like, "Hey, Coach, I'd just like to let you know my son here placed third in this event and he didn't get his little towel." And Coach Price looks at her. I mean, like she said that I had murdered someone. He said, "He didn't get his towel?" No, he didn't. He goes, "Well, that's horrible." So he pulls me back into the office. I get a towel, I get a t-shirt, I get a basketball. I get an armband, and then again, anyone who's been around the High River basketball camp, he's got a million of these old banners, like old college and pro teams. He asked me what my favorite team was. Again, going back to saying out LeBron James, my favorite team was the Cavs. So he pulls out this banner and hands it to me, and he goes, "Is this enough?" And at this point, me and my mom both are weighed down with stuff. He goes, because he said, I just can't simply, I can't simply accept the fact that we didn't let you get that little towel. He said, and I would really like you to come back next year. I think we left a bad first impression, but hopefully this makes up for it. So, talking about a guy who, again, I'd never even met him before. This is my first time at the camp, and that someone mistakenly had not given me a small little, probably 8x12 hand towel. And I walk out with probably like $120 worth of stuff, which was far more than even the admission price to even get into the camp. And, that's way before he ever knew the type of relationship we'd ever have. But that's just who Coach Price is. I mean, he doesn't have to know you from Adam. If he thinks he can do right by you, he's going to.
Okay, so you took a story from whenever you were growing up. Now let's go more towards your 4 years at Ravenswood. Do you have a specific story that just really sticks out to you about Coach Price?
Oh man, I have a million. So yeah, probably another good one would be my freshman year. As I said, I was a starter at Ravenswood. I was fortunate enough to be a starter all 4 years and start every game at Ravenswood. And with that, there's obviously a lot of responsibility because that's not a position a lot of people get to be in, and he definitely be accountable for that. So there was a specific practice about halfway through the year. We're running a transition drill, 5-on-5, like up and down the floor. I can't remember exactly what all we were doing, but I remember the specific play is I got a rebound, I took it the length of the floor and laid it in. I just kind of beat the defense back, get an easy lay in, and Coach Price runs out from the sideline and meets me half court, and he is just right up in my face. I mean, just screaming, and pretty much asked me like why I thought that was a good play. And of course, at that point, I was like, well, I got an easy layup. He said something like that. That's just a selfish play. That's horrible. And again, I was super confused. So then a couple plays later, similar thing happens. I get another easy lay-in, another thing. He comes out and meets me again. And at this point, I was like, oh my gosh, like I really am not sure what's going on, but okay, I'm just gonna take it. Like I know that's the thing. He never ripped you and didn't explain it. So I knew after practice, like we'd have a conversation about it. After practice over, he calls me back into his office, and he asked me if I remembered 2 times that he was ripping me for like essentially for nothing. I said, yeah. So what was really the reason for that? And he said, I'll be honest. He goes, I just kind of wanted to see how you'd react with that. He said, I want to see how well I can trust you right now at 14, because obviously, he said, I think this year we can take our team to the state tournament, which we were fortunate enough to do. And he said, I just want to kind of see where we're at, see where our relationship is. If I can push you to the extent that I would like to push you towards. And again, that just kind of goes back to what, as I was saying, he builds that relationship up with people, but he can do things like this, and he can kind of push the envelope sometimes in between the lines, because outside the court, I mean, you're not going to find a better person, and you're not going to find a better coach who's better with people than Coach Price.
You're 4 for 4. Just like your free throw percentage, you're perfect so far. Just saying. Okay, so we've talked about the community of Ravenswood. We've talked about an icon within that town, Mick Price. Now let's talk about a venue that you spent the majority of your time in, the Pit. Now, the Pit is very well known in southern West Virginia. For people that don't know about the Pit, walk them through how difficult is it to play there? What separates it from other venues that you've played in? Just walk us through that.
So the first thing, if you've never been to the Pit, the first thing you're going to notice is just all of the history. Literally every square inch of the inside of that building has some player's name on the wall. If you're a first team All-State, or your jersey painted on the wall, we have a state of West Virginia on the wall with all of our sectional championships. Every single year that we've tracked, we've won a sectional championship. We've got banners for every time we've made it to the state tournament, and they're color coded by the round that we've made it to. I mean, it's wild. And there's pictures up and down all the halls, just everywhere around. It's almost like a museum, really. When you think about it, it's almost just like a museum of like Ravenswood basketball history that you're playing inside of. And then one of the other things that's really iconic about Ravenswood is we have the walls. We have these brick walls with metal railings on top of them that go all the way around 2 sides of the gym. So the areas like under the basket are like a normal basketball gym. with padded walls in the background, but the entire sideline, about 4 to 6 feet away from the out of bounds line, are these brick walls, and I can't say I've ever seen or heard of anything like that. So that is just something else kind of adds to the atmosphere.
Incredible. I've never been there before. I will say that. I've never been before, but from what you and Coach Price have said, the history, the tradition, the culture of that place just makes it even more appealing. So I need to get down there, it seems like.
It would be worth the trip. And then you go into the locker room, and this is no exaggeration, every single plaque or medal or anything you can imagine that they've ever been able to find, like not even since they've been there. We have some from like the 50s that anyone's ever come across, is displayed in that room in some way, shape, or form. It's all visible.
That's wild. That's
yeah.
Much.
It's crazy.
So much history. I can sort of imagine it. So I will say this. Let me ask you this: Have you ever had the opportunity to go play at Willie Akers Fieldhouse?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I know you're probably gonna be biased, but just walk me through this. Which one? I'm not gonna ask you which one's better, but which one do you think just gets a little bit different feeling every time?
It could be that I'm biased, but Ravenswood. But I say that to say that I'm sure there's other gyms out there like the Willie Akers Fieldhouse, and there's just nothing built quite like the pit.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it is that like you mentioned earlier, like, so the pit's been there for 70 years now. So the part of it is that it's just an old building that they've just kept in pristine condition somehow over the decades. And then you couple that with the community involvement and just all the history that we have all around all the walls, the ceilings, and everything. And it's just truly unique. That's the thing about the pit more than anything, is it's just an entirely different experience than you're going to get anywhere else.
I like the sound of that, and I love to hear that as well. So let's move into your career at Ravenswood. So you mentioned how you guys were able to make the state tournament your freshman year, mm-hmm. and you were also able to make it in the latter part of your career at Ravenswood as well. So walk me through this. Preparation-wise, as an individual player, did you do anything different to get yourself mentally and physically prepared to play in the Civic Center?
No, really, because at that point in time, even my freshman year, so I had already played, a million basketball games. Like I had plenty of experience as a basketball player. So I guess the mindset I took into that was, even though like obviously it is more than just another game, the mindset that you put yourself in as a player is, it really is just another game. Just like any other place, where it's going to be 5-on-5. Everyone's going to put their shoes on the same way. There's just going to be a couple more people there to watch, but you don't ever notice who's in the stands anyway. So it's not really that big of a deal. And also something that kind of goes into Coach Price's preparation was the shootout in the big house. He intentionally made sure that our middle school team was one of the few middle school teams that got to play in that the year prior, just so he could guarantee that we had played in the Civic Center before and had that experience.
How about that? That's something unique. Mm-hmm. Something that a lot of
mm-hmm.
middle school teams could not say that they've done. So
yeah,
that's good. So you're going to have to educate me. I don't know this, and I apologize to all the Ravenswood fans out there, but I will ask Isaiah, who's an expert with this. Isaiah, who would you consider the biggest rival to Ravenswood?
So obviously our cross county rival is Ripley. Unfortunately, due to some classification differences and different things, like over the past few years, we've not played them. We always used to play them twice a year, but really kind of starting whenever I was in high school, that showed off. 1 year we didn't play them at all. My senior year we just played them once, and then it's kind of been broken up since then. Yeah, our our biggest rival is definitely Ripley, but we also have many, since we've been the LKC forever. We have many LKC opponents that the games kind of mean a little bit more, I would say.
So okay, let's talk about that then. So within the LKC, what makes that conference so unique in Southern West Virginia?
So it now I will say this, I'm a little bit unsure of now that we have the new classification system, but I can at least speak on whenever I was in school. It was composed of both AA and single A schools, really from the entire, I would say, west central to kind of like west southern area of the state, including like a lot of different schools that are just like the county school. So it's really covering like a pretty wide geographic area. I mean, a lot of times for conference games, sometimes we were traveling like 2 hours going to somewhere like Braxton County or something like that, Webster. So I think it's pretty cool that the LKC ties in so many different schools from a variety of different regions and even from different classes. It's pretty cool the way that tied that all in.
Okay, so let's talk about a few things. Team-wise, what made those Ravenswood teams that you played with from your freshman year to your senior year so unique and so fun to play with?
So again, I think it goes without saying, but we are extremely well coached, and I think really every single guy that I played with just bought into the system really, really well, and we always had a very well thought out, well installed game plan, and night in and night out, everyone on the team always just bought into that, and we did a really good job consistently at trying to accomplish our game plan. I think we had a lot of really good athletes. I mean, one of the things at Ravenswood that's common for other small schools and not so much for a lot of the big schools is we didn't have a lot of guys that focused on basketball. I was one of like the few guys while I was playing that was just a basketball player. Most guys were 3-4 sport athletes. So even guys that basketball may not have been their number one sport, they did a really good job that when the time came, they were 100% bought in, and they were doing everything it took to play their role and do what it took to win.
Okay, so let's talk about this. And I always find this unique because within teams, you have that star player, but also you have guys that don't really get talked about enough. Can you pinpoint a person that you played with that you thought personally did not get a lot of love in regards to accolades and just attention in general? Can you think of somebody like that?
Oh yeah. I could name our entire roster because I think we were fortunate enough to make the state tournament 4 years, and when that happens, unfortunately, there's going to be some guys that are looked over. So outside of the few of us on the team that were fortunate enough to get picked by the sports writers to be all conference and all state players, I think whenever you have a team that's that successful, a lot of the other guys are going to get overlooked. But if I was to probably pinpoint one guy, I would say on our senior year team, Blake Bennett. He was kind of like our defensive specialist that year. In previous years, a lot of times when we had, it was either me or Riley Hetherington that were guarding the other team's best player. And that year, just a different defensive scheme, Coach Price used Blake, and Blake guarded all state, all conference guys essentially every game. And quite frequently, he was holding them to season lows. I mean, even if you go back and look through box scores throughout our state tournament run, I mean, he's holding, I think he held 2 or 3 different guys that were making all state teams to like 6 or 8 points. And just because he didn't quite have the scoring average, we had 2 first team all state guys, me and Steven, that were doing the bulk of the scoring. I think he really got overlooked because he was as good of a defensive player, I think, as we had in Class Single A that year.
For people that don't know, Riley Hetherington is actually, did play for the University of Charleston under Coach Dwayne Osborne. So if people are thinking, okay, I've heard that name, that's how you know that name. He played at UC for Dwayne Osborne as well. So, Isaiah, as we continue on, let's talk a little bit about recruiting before I get you out of here. So, recruiting, walk me through that. We know that you played a season at West Virginia Tech, but growing up through high school, who were some other teams that were in the mix for you to just ultimately that you wanted to go pursue that next level of basketball?
Yeah. So I played a good bit of AAU, so I had exposure to a variety of different programs. I wasn't really getting a whole lot of D1 looks as far as like scholarship. I had a few places that showed some interest as a walk-on, but I kind of always knew going into college that I was wanting to pursue medicine ultimately. So I'd kind of always had this feeling that my college career would be fairly short. So I wanted to go somewhere that I could play and be part of something for maybe just like a year, 2 or 3. So I never really pursued a lot of like out-of-state schools, but the 3 biggest ones that showed the most interest and that I was really debating towards, obviously Tech, which is where I ultimately attended, but also Wesleyan and Glenville State.
Okay, that's cool. So let's talk about Tech. You committed to play for Tech under Bob Williams, who's now, after he retired, he then is now at Fork Union. So congratulations to Coach Williams on that opportunity. But let's talk about Coach Williams, Isaiah. And you played for a legendary head coach in high school. Then you go on to college and you play for one of the better known Division II coaches in Bob Williams, who was very successful in his time at West Virginia Tech. What was he like? Walk me through Coach Williams. What was he like as a person and as a coach? Did you see similarities between him and Coach Price? Just walk us through that.
Yeah, so for sure. So yeah, they're, like I said, with Coach Price, they were both very fiery individuals. They're definitely motivators. They're guys that would push the envelope and push all their guys to try to be the best players they could be each and every day. And Coach Williams, one trait that I think really has helped him to succeed when he was at West Virginia Tech was he was a great recruiter. I mean, to win at the NAIA level, you're competing against a lot of different schools that have guys from a variety of backgrounds, and he was able to integrate and put together a lot of different players from a lot of different backgrounds. And we had a few different D1 guys. We had guys from all over the country. So he did a great job of putting together a variety of individuals and securing some great talent and getting us to all work together towards a common goal and have a pretty successful season my year there at Tech.
Now, we've already mentioned, again, you're perfect 4 for 4 with stories. Is there a Bob Williams story that you're willing to share?
As far as just in general?
Just in general.
I think, well, maybe we can come back to that.
Okay.
Something else may like spark that. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so let's talk about this. So you get thrown onto the scene at Tech with the Golden Bears. You have a tremendous team that you're playing around, but your first game of the season you actually play in was against Ohio State Mansfield. You step onto that court and you think what?
And again, at that point, you've played so much basketball. Like while there's definitely, it's definitely kind of a surreal experience. That was kind of more so like the jitters and everything. That's more so in warmups. At the end of the day, whenever the ball is thrown for tip off, you're just playing basketball again. It's just something you've been doing your entire life. And I don't know. I mean, for me, it was just always something that I enjoyed so much. There just really wasn't time for jitter or nerves. I mean, it was just something I was just happy to be a part of, and it was just tremendous to be able to experience playing at the collegiate level.
So one game that you just absolutely said, okay, you want to see what I'm like? I'll show you exactly who I'm like. You went out there against Appalachian Bible College in February of your freshman season and scored 23 points. I have to ask, how many bowls of Wheaties did you eat?
Oh, I don't know. So yeah, fortunately, I was able to as a freshman get some playing time, and there was a couple games I was able to make an impact on our team. But again, we had an incredibly talented team. I really think that every single guy on our roster really made a big impact throughout the year, and I was just fortunate a few different games to be one of those guys that helped our team win.
I'm looking through this roster right now, and it amazes me that you that you play with a lot of West Virginia guys, and actually one guy that I actually didn't really go to high school with, but he's from Winfield. It's Cole Schoolcraft. I talked to Coach Williams about him. What made Cole Schoolcraft so different than other players on the court?
I mean, Cole is just such a smart individual and such a smart basketball player. And if you do, which I'm sure you have, if you do like a deep dive into the statistics, he always had an absolutely insane assist to turnover ratio. And that right there, I think, is probably the biggest statistic that kind of defined who he was. He was really, really efficient, very extremely unselfish player, just a solid traditional old school point guard, took care of the ball, and made everybody around him better.
Another guy that's from West Virginia, but also the guy from Southern West Virginia and the South Charleston area, that I think he's like Perry Ellis from Kansas. You think that he's gone, but he's always still there. Just it just feels like every time you play, you're like, he's still there playing. Like, yeah. Oh my gosh, he's just a tremendous ball player. That's how good he is. But Tamon Scruggs, what I can tell right now that this is gonna be a great answer. Yeah. What's Tamon? Just describe Tamon Scruggs' game.
So anyone who's ever seen Tamon Scruggs play for more than 5 minutes, he has the fastest hands I've ever seen.
Really?
Fastest hands I've ever seen. Yes, it's insane. So he is not like the fastest, like up and down the floor guy, but he has the fastest hands I've ever seen. It's insane. Like if you have the ball low around him, it's his. It's the bombs. Unreal. I mean, and he's deceivingly like side to side quick too. So yeah, it really makes him an extremely versatile player. Because again, Tamon is not that tall of a guy, but he's really strong, and he's able to actually, oftentimes, post up much bigger guys, and he'll just pull them out. He'll take them to like the mid post, and he'll work his way inside and draw fouls, get the free throw line. He's a great free throw shooter, and defensively, between his quick hands and strength, I mean, he could guard pretty much anyone out there on the floor. Even without maybe being like one of like the traditionally like most athletic guys, like he's not going to be a guy who's just jumping up and dunking over everybody. My goodness, yeah, just an extremely underrated defender.
So let's talk about this. So you played one season at Tech, and I have to ask this question, and that is, what led you to stepping away from basketball and taking on more of an academic role? Because obviously the biggest term that everybody thinks about whenever you're an athlete is the student athlete side of it, but you're going more towards the student side of it. Why is that?
So kind of as I touched on earlier, so my two biggest goals, as I was growing up, is I was always interested in going into medicine, and I wanted to be a doctor. And then basketball is always my passion. And I wanted to play that as long as I was able to. I really wanted to be a college basketball player. And it just happened that I was fortunate enough to go and play college basketball for a year. But I think for me personally, I just kind of came to a crossroads where it was going to essentially be choosing one or the other. and it was certainly not an easy decision. I mean, I still love basketball. It was nothing to do with love for the game or anything like that. But I think for my life and for the long term, it was definitely the best decision to end my career and pursue my academics more wholeheartedly. And again, it has worked out because I'm going to be able to go to med school now. So for a long time, it was not an easy call, but I think looking back now, for sure, I definitely think I made the right decision.
Now, do you still lay stuff from time to time?
Absolutely. Whenever I get a chance, yeah, I got to play pickup all the time.
I think I might have answered my own question before I even said the words out loud.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do a few fun questions. How about that? Let's do this. So you're a guy that grew up in a small community, ultimately lived his dream of playing collegiate basketball. But let's take it from this standpoint. You played 4 years of varsity basketball at Ravenswood. Went to the state tournament numerous times. We don't need to repeat that. But in your eyes, what advice would you give a young student athlete that's wanting to sort of be similar to what you did throughout your basketball journey? What advice would you give that person?
Just try to outwork everybody. I mean, I'm not going to say that's what I did. That I did outwork every single guy around the state. I think that would be like a ridiculous thing to say. But I definitely think that I outworked most because I was not a natural athlete. I was not the most naturally gifted player. But I think I was able to work on the more skilled portions of my game, especially shooting, and carve out a pretty solid career for myself. So I would say, regardless of your natural gifts, first of all, try to maximize those, but then just try to develop your game and work on it each and every day and become the most well-rounded player you can be.
Okay, so let's talk about this then. So from one person to another, how would you describe boys high school basketball in the state of West Virginia?
I think it's very underrated. I think that'd be, if in one word, underrated. I think there are consistently so many good, talented basketball players that are often overlooked by like college programs and just media in general, just because we don't have the state population as many other places. But the talent's definitely there. It's always been there, and I think it's always going to be there.
Okay, so you mentioned two guys by the name of Chase Fisher and Brett Rector early on in the podcast.
Yeah.
Now, outside of those two, who are some other guys you loved watching growing up from the high school basketball ranks?
So I think if I remember, I've looked at, I kind of skimmed the list of some of the guys that you've done before, but Chase Fielder. Have you worked with Fielder before?
I've interviewed Chase. He's a friend of the program. Yes.
Yeah. So Fielder, going up through high school, college, and then now in his career is still ongoing. But he was definitely a guy I looked up to too. I've known Chase forever, and I think just kind of watching his career path and his trajectory, it was really cool to see a guy who grew up just 25 minutes from Ravenswood, just south, and Ravenswood are very close. See a guy excel at even like D1 and professional level. That was pretty cool.
Okay, so let's take it from this then, and it's a couple more. So, in your mind, do you ever see yourself potentially being a coach? I mean, I know you're obviously going to be in the medicine field, and that would be a lot of time on your hand, but could you potentially see yourself being a coach? I mean, from the way that you've been talking, I'm like, he could be a really good coach.
Absolutely. I've that's definitely been a goal of mine. So I actually, like I said, I love basketball, and I can't truly get away from it. So during the summers, and sometimes even like in the spring and the fall, like when I get some weekends, I've been trying to help around the Ravenswood program when I can. I've done workouts with just kids in the area. Sometimes they aren't even from Ravenswood. So I've definitely tried to stay connected to the game, and I definitely definitely would try to take advantage if the opportunity ever presented itself to coach high school level if I ever could.
And then lastly, how good is, well, no, let's say, let me rephrase. How important is AAU basketball to somebody building their basketball profile if they're wanting to pursue collegiate basketball?
I think at this point in time, it's almost required. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of people who may listen to this and say, well, I made it to college and maybe I didn't play AU basketball because I played like other sports. But I mean, they're few and far between. I would figure to say, because essentially, basketball is a game of reps. It's just, the amount of time you're playing basketball and work on your game and getting better. And AAU just provides a longer portion of the year that you're able to play basketball, and especially at a high level. I mean, most of the time, whenever you're talking about AAU, you're talking about taking like maybe the best player, maybe the best two players from each school across the state, nationwide. We're pairing them together, and you're just really it's playing the best against the best. So whenever you're playing high level competition, an extra 3, 4, 5 months out of the year, you're going to develop much faster than guys who aren't doing that. So again, it may not be a 100% of the time thing, but I would say if you are a young basketball player and you're wanting to get to the next level, I would very strongly recommend that you try to find some type of AU team or program you can get become a part of, and try to keep developing your game each and every day.
Well, Isaiah, I appreciate your time. This was fun to talk with you again, since we haven't talked in a while. But I appreciate your time, and best of luck the rest of the way for you as you now embark on your next endeavor in the medicine field.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So that will conclude episode 67 of Hoops Across the Mountain State with our terrific guest, Isaiah Morgan from Ravenswood High School, played under Mick Price, four-year varsity letterman as well, 92.1 career percentage from the charity stripe, unreal, which is the West Virginia record, by the way, if you didn't know that. But without further ado, this will conclude episode 67. Thank you all again for listening. And again, thank you all for the love and support as well as I continue to march on through this podcast. And as always, follow me on Twitter at Taylor_Kennedy7. And you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Spotify as well. Again, I'm going to say this again. Be prepared for basketball preseason talk. Just saying, it will be a truck full of fun. Just saying. When I mean truck full, there will be a lot of information to be unleashed, unpacked, and said. So you will not want to miss it here on Hoops Across the Mountain State. Thank you all for listening, and stay safe.